Hi, this video is about how to chip solder jewelry pieces. My example here is just a couple pieces of copper that I took out of my scrap box. They have been pickled already, so they are clean. I'm going to flux over my seam, and I've got a piece of solder right there. Hopefully you can see that. And I'm going to use my pair of tweezers here. I'm going to set that right across the seam. I don't want to put it to one side or the other, right across the seam in the middle of that seam so that it will actually attach those two pieces. I want to make sure that I'm working on fire brick or another surface that is not flammable. I really like to work on the fire brick. I think it works very, very well. Again, I've fluxed my seam. I used tweezers to place the tiny chip of solder, and I'm only going to do one solder seam so I can use easy solder. And I'm going to light my torch. I'm using the Smith little torch. Remember, if it snaps and goes out, it's got too much oxygen. If it's sooty and yellow, it does not have enough oxygen. Okay, so there's my flame, and I want to actually start up above this and slowly come down so that my flux gets crusty and holds that solder in place. If I go up too quickly, my solder will bubble and my flux will bubble and my solder will fly off, and I'll need to reposition it. If I see my solder jumping, I need to back up a little bit so that I don't boil my flux. You can see how the flux is getting crusty, so now it's holding my solder in place. And I can come up closer. Remember that the solder flows toward the heat, so where I'm holding my flame tip is going to make a difference. Did you see where the solder just went in between there? So now I'm just going to heat that a little bit more, and my solder did flash, and you can see it flow into the seam. I'm going to pick it up. If it sticks, it's just a little bit of flux. If it sticks to the brick, and I'm going to heat from the other side and pull that solder through. So I'll see that solder get really shiny, and really silvery, and then pull that solder through. Once I'm done, I take my tweezers and I quench it. Make sure that you quench both the tip of the tweezers, because they'll be hot because you touched it, and quench the entire piece. The brick is still going to be hot, but now this is really soldered together very well. If it falls apart, it means it really was not soldered, because remember, the solder needs to go into the molecular structure of the metal, not just sit on the surface. Once you've done this and you quenched it and cooled it, of course I did that before I picked it up, I want to put that into the pickle to remove any fire scale that may be on there and any flux.